Hey, want a cookie? Oh, I know you just ate, so you're craving something a little sweet. Besides, one cookie isn't gonna kill you. How about half? Just a bite? Bite it. Bite it. Bite it.
Food noise isn't fair, but Mochi Health is. Your affordable GLP-1 source that puts you on a path to successful weight loss by quieting food noise.
Bite it.
Shh. Learn more at joinmochi.com. Mochi members have access to licensed physicians and nutritionists. Results may vary.
This episode of Voices for Justice is sponsored by Shopify. Starting a business is filled with a lot of what-ifs. What if I fail? What if nobody listens to the podcast? What if nobody cares? It can definitely be hard to get over that doubt and uncertainty, but making that leap was one of the best things I've ever done, and it's great to know that I'm not alone with a business partner like Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like Heinz and Mattel to brands just getting started. And I'm telling you, their tools really do feel like you have a business partner. They have hundreds of ready-to-use templates to help build a beautiful online store that matches your brand. You can also get the word out like you have an entire marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. And if you get stuck, Shopify is always there to help with their award-winning 24/7 customer service. It's time to turn those what-ifs into with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/justice. Go to shopify.com/justice. That's shopify.com/justice. Voices for Justice is a podcast that uses adult language and discusses sensitive and potentially triggering topics, including violence, abuse, and murder. This podcast may not be appropriate for younger audiences. All parties are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Some names have been changed or omitted per their request or for safety purposes. Listener discretion is advised. My name is Sarah Turney, and this is Voices for Justice. In the last episode, we discussed my father's upbringing, the potential abuse he and his siblings suffered, and his long history of having inappropriate and sometimes aggressive relationships with women and young girls. And we heard that awful audio of him interviewing 4 very young girls and calling them pretty. I left you with my parents and siblings driving off to start their new lives as a blended family. In this episode, we will be talking about Alyssa's early life, our mother, and this new family dynamic. We will explore what it was like for Alyssa in those early years and how our father treated her so differently from the rest of the children. And we will also be exploring the extremely suspicious circumstances surrounding my mother's death and my father's possible involvement. I will be introducing you to some new witnesses in this episode. You will meet my mother's sister Teresa, her sister-in-law Lori, and her best friend Linda. They were all very close to the family during this time, and each have a unique perspective and interesting information about what happened. But let's start with my mother's background. 10 years younger than my father, my mother, Barbara Lee Farner, was born in 1958 in Texas to Linda and Earl Farner. She was the third of their 4 children. She had an older brother named Kevin and 2 sisters, Lynette, who unfortunately passed away this year, and Teresa, who you will hear from in this episode. I never knew much about my mother's childhood, and that information isn't in police reports, so I had to ask around. And it seems that it wasn't the easiest, but it wasn't the worst. She moved around a bit, and her siblings were split between different parents, so the 4 of them didn't always spend a lot of time together growing up. But one of the things that my Aunt Teresa remembers vividly is how stubborn my mother was and how much she just wanted to be a mom.
Always wanted to. When she got a little bit older, she loved babies and little kids. And that's what she always wanted for herself. And she wanted, a few kids. I don't want to be married to anybody. I don't want to deal with a husband, 13, 14 years old. And she'd say, yep, I'm going to have kids. I don't want any husband. I just want kids.
My mother was 12 in 1970 and seems to have experienced the decade to its fullest as a teenager. By this time, she was living with her mother and younger sister Lynette. They loved music, Bob Dylan, and smoking pot. Before Lynette passed, she told me stories of them sneaking out of their bedroom window to go to parties and meet boys. And then, as teenagers do, my mother fell in love with one of those boys and had her first child, my brother John, in 1977 when she was 19 years old. But the relationship with John's father didn't last, and staying true to her 13-year-old self, my mother never married him. But eventually, she found love again, and she decided she would give this whole marriage thing a try. And not too long after, Alyssa Marie was born to my mother and her husband, Stephen Strom, in 1984. And when Alyssa was only 3 weeks old, my mother had to go back to work and needed a babysitter. This is when she met Linda, who Alyssa would eventually grow up calling Mom. No one spent more time with Alyssa than Linda, and she remembers it vividly.
I met Barbara about 3 weeks before Alyssa was born. She came into my home because I ran a daycare in my home, and she came to interview me. She was supposed to be there at 2. She came at 12:30. I had three in high chairs feeding them. I had kindergartners I was getting ready to get sent off. And I thought, oh, what a worse time. She's going to see me. I'm so disorganized. But I really was never disorganized. And then when Alyssa was 3 weeks old, she started to do daycare at my home. Your mom was like an alarm clock. I would set my watch by her. Your mom was in the house by 7:23 every morning. And she would pick her up at about 5:20 to 5:30 every afternoon.
Yeah, so 10 hours a day.
Yeah, Monday through Friday. And sometimes Saturday. And sometimes Sunday.
And it wasn't too long until my mother would meet my father, Michael Roy Turney, and he would become obsessed with having her, continuing his now over 10-year pattern of pursuing married women. My father always said that he and my mother met when he saw her and Alyssa hiding from Steve in a park after he'd become angry. He said that he came to her rescue, and they fell in love, and the rest was history. But Linda's story sounds a bit more believable.
You know how they met, right?
I've heard a lot of different stories about how they met.
Mike went into the bank where your mom worked. Your mom was a loan officer. And Mike went in to get a second on the house that he lived in. And the next day he sent her flowers. And the next day he sent her flowers. And then he went in again and asked if he'd take her to lunch. Your mom's unhappy with Steve. So she says to me, Steve and I are getting divorced. And I said, what? And she goes, yeah, I moved out like last week or so. So then by then your dad's starting to show up in the picture. And I said to her, so when did you meet him? And she goes, oh, we had an affair. We've been having an affair. And she just was unhappy with him. And along came Mike. And she had moved out of Steve's house, but I didn't know she was moving in with Mike. It was quiet. And the minute basically the divorce was final with Steve, and she married Mike the next day.
Wow. I didn't know that. I didn't know it was that quick.
And they went to the Justice of the Peace on a Friday afternoon. And were married. They didn't do any honeymoon or anything.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. A reminder that whatever you're going through, you don't have to go through alone. I think we all know that life is a journey. Some days feel good and others feel extremely overwhelming. Whatever's keeping you up at night, it's easy to feel like you have to figure it out all on your own. But the truth is, no one has all the answers, and no one should have to go on this journey alone. Having someone with you to listen, to understand, and support you can make all the difference. That's where BetterHelp comes in. BetterHelp therapists work according to a strict code of conduct and are fully licensed in the U.S., and they do the initial matching work for you so you can focus on your therapy goals. All you do is fill out a short questionnaire to help identify your needs and preferences. And if you aren't happy with your match, you can switch to a different therapist at any time. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, and it works. They have an average rating of 4.9 out of 5 for a live session. You don't have to be on this journey alone. Find support and have someone with you in therapy. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/justice. That's betterhelp.com/justice. This episode of Voices for Justice is sponsored by Chewy. If you have pets, you probably know about Chewy, and you also know that when they say that they have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy, they're not messing around. To keep them happy, Chewy has over 100,000 products from all the brands my pets love at prices I love. To keep them healthy, Chewy offers pet prescriptions, pet insurance, telehealth vet visits, and they're even rolling out vet clinics across the country. I've been shopping with them for a very long time. And in addition to the auto-ship feature that gets the dog's food to them every single month, I also love to experiment with different treats. But I'm a bit picky. For me, it has to be high quality with simple ingredients. I recently picked up treats from Shepherd Boy Farms that are 100% just chicken breast. Popcorn and Heber are already obsessed. Chewy has everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. And right now, you can save $20 on your first order and get free shipping by going to chewpanions.chewy.com/Sarah E. Turney. That's chewpanions.chewy.com/Sarah E. Turney to save $20 on your first order with free shipping. chewpanions.chewy.com/Sarah E. Turney. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details. This episode of Voices for Justice is brought to you by Quince. I've been trying to be more intentional about what I wear each day. I'm leaning into pieces that feel effortless, comfortable, and still put together. And Quince has been my go-to. The fabrics feel elevated, the fits are flattering, and everything just works without overthinking it. They use premium materials like 100% European linen, organic cotton, and ultra-soft denim. And the best part? Everything is priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. They work directly with ethical factories and cut out the middlemen, so you're paying for quality and craftsmanship, not brand markup. I recently just ordered their tiered linen dress, of course in black. I wanted to pair it with one of my favorite pairs of brown wedges. The problem was, I didn't have a brown purse. So I got that from Quince too. It's one of my favorite outfits. It's easy, effortless, and feels amazing. Especially as we're getting a little bit warmer here in Phoenix. Refresh your everyday with luxury you'll actually use. Head to quince.com/justice for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/justice for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/justice.
It wasn't too long before they stopped allowing Alyssa's biological father to see her. And he wasn't too happy about it. He even reportedly tried to run my father over with a car, resulting in my father trying some crazy karate kick through the car window. And then, in 1988, my parents had their only child together, me. And to be honest, there seems to have been a lot of good times in the family at this point. They had full custody of all 6 kids, and there was a huge focus on spending time together and making memories. Although it might be more appropriate to consider this odd and doomed creation of a family more of a Dr. Frankenstein type of project, my father, and those who didn't know better, would describe it as something like the Brady Bunch. And for a while, it really seemed that way.
I don't doubt for a minute that, especially in the first few years, in the early years, I don't doubt for a minute that Barbara probably saw Mike as the answer to all her problems, because that's how he presents himself.
Yeah.
When you're living a life of, no structure, and somebody comes along and shows you structure, what you believe is structure, and it's really control, but it looks like structure, and it's like, oh my God, this is great. Now I'm going to get this great life, and my kids are going to have somebody who knows how to take care of them and wants to blah, and I'm sure he painted this great picture. And it was just towards the end that she started to realize that picture was all watercolors and that the rain was washing away the color. Yeah. And, it's all the crap that was going on started to fade the picture that she had of what her future and her life was going to look like, which is, again, why I think she was ready to move on to do what she thought was the right thing for you kids.
Like Teresa said, my father's true colors would show. And my mother quickly became unsure about him. He was becoming more violent, strange, and paranoid.
Not only that, but he'd tap the phones too. Barbara would always say, "We need to go have coffee." And because she told me that Mike was tapping the phones. I'm like, the fuck for?
Fair enough,
I said,
yeah.
I'm not sure about this, Mike. And she'd say, well, I just, did you want to talk to me about that thing? Let's have coffee.
Wow.
And I'd say, oh, okay, yeah, let's have coffee.
So she expressed concerns about my father when you guys went to
yeah.
coffee. What did she say?
Once in a while she'd say something like, Mike and she have to go out in the desert. Or some of the holes in the walls weren't just the boys.
Wow. But what would he get mad over?
Anything.
Yeah.
Anything.
They also had money problems. Like Linda mentioned in the story of how my parents met, my father got a second mortgage on the home. And my father was known to purchase things on store credit cards and return them for cash to make ends meet. My parents even divorced and remarried so my father could file for bankruptcy. My mother became a stay-at-home mom to 6 kids, the oldest being only 13 years younger than her, and things were hectic. She babysat other kids in the neighborhood, they bred dogs for extra money. In all the home videos, you just see mass amounts of kids and dogs running around. There's always someone yelling, someone crying, and I'm sure it was a lot to handle. At one point, when I was about 3 years old, I even slipped out of the house and got hit by a car and was taken by Child Protective Services. And around the same time, Alyssa had to be rushed to the hospital to have her stomach pumped. She had gotten into some medication of our father's, and she was also taken by Child Protective Services. And it seems like this is more than my father could bear. He checked himself into a mental rehabilitation center for a few months. But it wasn't just this hectic new family that caused this. The reasoning seems to be a combination of factors, as this is right where we start seeing the union activity popping up in the timeline of this story. If you aren't familiar with this case, my father developed a lifelong obsession with a labor union he was a part of, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, or IBEW for short. My father joined this union in 1974 when he resigned from his job as deputy sheriff and began working as an electrician. My father joined the local chapters of this union in California, Montana, and Arizona as we moved around. But the focus of this eventually violent obsession was the local 640 chapter in Phoenix, Arizona. But it's in 1986 that we see this first tiff with the union appear in the reports. It's when my father failed a test to receive a promotion. He said it was rigged, that no one would be able to pass the test. He says the union did this on purpose, so they wouldn't have to promote from within the union, and they could hire someone from the outside. My father responded by printing and distributing a copy of the labor agreement around his workplace. He also responded by filing an official complaint, stating, quote, "Since on or about May 1987, the above labor organization by its officers, agents, and representatives has harassed and discriminated against Mike Turney because said individual withdrew his membership from the above labor organization." End quote. The union responded by dismissing all of my father's charges due to insufficient evidence. He then appealed this decision, but he lost again. And 2 years later, in January of 1988, he would file another complaint against the union. This time, claiming that his coworkers weren't talking to him, and they didn't want to work with him. He also brought this up in a meeting in front of everyone, and people started speaking out. They said my father had been recording their conversations, and that's why no one wanted to work with him. During this meeting, one of his coworkers is quoted as saying, "Why does this company jump through its ass when Mike Turney says something?" This coworker goes on to question why the tape recording is allowed, and complains that my father was paid for the hours he spent at home after getting upset and leaving work due to these coworkers refusing to socialize with him. These arguments may seem silly, but they would later escalate into what my father described as threats. He said they'd call at all hours of the night, threatening the family. And my brothers say they remember answering some of these calls. And they remember some type of physical scuffle in a parking garage with a man my father claimed to be a part of the union. And to be fair, my research on union disputes shows that these types of small tiffs can turn violent under the right circumstances. There are even entire movies dedicated to union disputes turning violent. So I think it would be unfair to say that there was no corruption and there were no threats. I just don't think it went to the level of men in dark suits and dark cars following the family, let alone the kidnapping of Alyssa, as my father would later claim. We will continue to explore the escalation of the issues with the union throughout the podcast, but it's important to note that these situations added to the need for my father to take this mental break.
I don't understand, and actually checked himself into a hospital for, 2 or 3 months.
My dad
So
did?
she's left there. Yeah.
Oh, I haven't heard it. Like a mental hospital, or?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes, he checked himself into it because she was so angry. She said, he's left me here to pick up these pieces and to take care of this. And I want to say maybe it was just a couple months. I don't remember what the time frame was. But she had called me and she said his ass checked into some hospital somewhere, and he left me here to deal with all of this. She was just livid, which only cements for her the need to just get the heck out.
My mother was obviously upset about this decision. She even makes small remarks on home videos to him before he leaves. And Linda remembers it well. Left alone with 6 kids, she felt abandoned. And when he came back, he didn't seem to be any better. And it was becoming more and more clear that our father treated Alyssa differently. He didn't show her the same affection as the other kids. And despite Alyssa loving him and seeking his love and attention, our father was more often than not visibly annoyed with her.
Mike, your dad had convinced her that we were all this one big Brady Bunch family. And we all saw it. We all saw how he treated Alyssa differently. And I said it on 2020, and it just, because we saw so many incidents of where Alyssa was treated differently. And Lynette relayed the story to me that when she was, I think it was when y'all were still in Phoenix and she stayed behind them. And one night, you, Alyssa, and she went with your dad to the grocery. And we're doing some shopping, and you were teasing with Alyssa and jumping on her back. And you jumped on her back once, and Alyssa, I guess her knee went out from under anyway, ended up falling. You were crying. Your dad took it out on Alyssa, telling her what a bad sister she was, or whatever. But he blamed Alyssa for the whole incident, and Alyssa started crying. So she took Alyssa out to the car, and they were sitting out there, and she was just trying to get her to calm down and not, stop crying. And she said, Alyssa turned to her, and she said, Aunt Lynette, why doesn't my daddy love me?
Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah. So Alyssa, even at that young of an age, felt like she wasn't loved by her daddy.
When I was reviewing home videos for this episode, you can see how Alyssa longed for our father's attention, but he didn't often reciprocate this love.
Sarah, look at your dad. Sarah. Look at your dad. Sarah, move out of the way, listen a minute. Sarah. Hi, Dad. Boy, somebody's awful messy, Dad. Walk through the door. Did you make that mess? Yes, I did, Dad. Awful good stuff, though, Dad, really.
This next clip is from Halloween of 1989. I'm just over a year old, irritated in my uncomfortable, oversized devil costume while my parents coo over me. Alyssa is twirling for the camera again, practically begging my father to record her. Ironic, I know.
Hi, Dad.
Hi, Les. Move out of the way a second. I got a picture of Sarah. I see you, Les. I see Miss Piggy. Because I don't want to hear. Aww.
Now this could be a natural side effect of Alyssa not being the baby in the family anymore. She's craving extra attention while our parents fussed over the new baby. But I reviewed over 40 hours of home videos for this time period, and there are almost no videos of Alyssa being shown affection or attention from our father. And you mostly hear him tell her to get out of the shot. or he promises that he's filming her while he pans off to another kid. But despite this disinterest in showing Alyssa the affection she was seeking, my father began expressing concerns that Alyssa might have a learning disability. And you might remember from episode 1, he said they even hired a tutor because he thought she was so far behind the milestones for a child about to start kindergarten. But Linda, who, remember, watched Alyssa 5 to 7 days a week growing up, says that's not true at all.
So, I mean, you were really close to her, so one thing I have to ask is my dad always says, Alyssa had a learning disability.
No. Absolutely not.
Yeah, he said, Sarah, you have to remember that we had to hire a tutor to teach her her ABCs. And I said, well, that's probably your fault.
She knew her ABCs.
She knew her ABCs?
She bet she did. She knew her ABCs, she could count, she knew what channel. At the age of 2, she knew what channel Pooh Bear was on, because it was on right after she got up from her nap. When the kids all came home from school, was about the time she woke up from her nap. And if she didn't get to watch Pooh Bear, she just threw a fit.
Yeah.
And she'd tell them all to get out of the living room. She wasn't delayed, and she could write her name before she went in kindergarten. Even Turney, she could write Turney. Alyssa was not, by any means, delayed.
When going through the home videos, I found a clip of Alyssa singing her ABCs. Our father was taping me when I was about 6 months old, and he was getting irritated that Alyssa kept getting in the picture.
Rug shot, Swift. That's what they call a rug shot, though, a hypnotizer. What are you doing?
Your dad take it off automatic.
Let's go get in the middle, Liz. Don't get move, Liz. Move. Don't get in there, Liz. I want to get a picture of her. Liz, you're going to have to move your leg, honey. You're going to have to move your leg. Miss, would you please move out of the way? There. That's a picture of my boogers. What are you doing? Are you flying? Are you a flyer? Huh? He says it's her name.
I have to admit that it hurts to hear those clips. I always felt Alyssa and I were treated differently, but I also always thought that we were loved equally. But that really wasn't the case. We will dive deeper into that in the next episode, but it's important to note that this is not something that slowly developed over decades. We were always treated differently. Alyssa never felt equally loved, and I don't blame her. So at this point, I think it's safe to say Alyssa wasn't exhibiting any signs of a learning disability. In fact, it seemed like Linda's work with her gave her a head start for kindergarten. She knew her ABCs, and she knew how to write her name. So between the paranoia, the violence, and Alyssa being treated differently, our mother was already getting fed up with our father. And then something happened that she couldn't ignore.
Wait, so I've seen a document that Alyssa was taken to the doctor to be checked for sexual abuse, but I've never seen the results. What happened?
What I do know is that she did have some scar tissue that suggested that yes, she had been sexually abused.
And she was what, like 7 at the time, 6 or 7?
7, 8 years old, somewhere in there.
My mother knew it was time to get away from my father, so she started babysitting more kids and cutting back expenses to save money so she could get me, Alyssa, and John away from our father. But then my mother started complaining about a pain in her back, and it wouldn't go away. So she went to the chiropractor, who took some x-rays, and suggested that she consult another doctor. And a week later, she got the call. She had lung and bone cancer. Apparently a false positive she had gotten after I was born wasn't a false positive at all, and it had been growing for years. The outcome didn't look good.
And a week later, they called, and she called me back and told me that she had cancer everywhere. And it was going to be the next week they were going to go in and do an exploratory. And that's when they went in. They took out 3 of mom's ribs. Were you aware of that?
No.
They took out part of her collarbone. She had cancer of the bone, cancer of the lung. They could see some lesions, different places of her. So anyway, they went in and they did all of this. And then she went in and did radiation. And then after you guys moved to Reading, then it was back. And she literally would drive herself. That's what pissed me off. She would drive herself, which was like a half-an-hour drive, and get her chemotherapy and radiation, and then she would drive herself back. And she would call me on her way back each time she had it done. I said, I want you to eat today. Will you eat today? And she'd say, no. When I saw your mom, I saw her about a month before she died. Your mother was just so tiny.
It was at this time that my mother's family started coming around the house more often, checking on our mother. Her brother and his wife Lori came out to talk about what they were going to do, how to care for my mother. But my father didn't seem too concerned about making these plans.
So we found out Barbara had cancer. Or we found, I think she had just gotten her diagnosis. So Kevin and I went down to, Phoenix Junior. We all went down, and that's when we first met Mike. He took us for a walk. I mean, we went and seen Barbara, and then he's like, we need to take a walk. We need to talk. And he didn't want to talk about Barbara. I can't remember who all was on the walk. It was like 5 of us.
Okay.
And all he wanted to talk about was this conspiracy theory about JFK. And, Kevin and I looked at each other like, okay, seriously, we were like, what kind of weirdo is this? We should be talking about Barbara. What we set out to do was talk about a kind of a battle plan of how we were going to take care of her. What everybody was going to do, and we were all going to, take our turns and do, this, and all she wanted to talk about was this union and these, how he's an ex-cop and everybody was out to get him, and there was all these conspiracies going on around him. And, that was my first experience. And Kevin and I both are just like, oh my God, we don't want this. What did Barbara do?
Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why customers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years now. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they'll show you options that fit your budget. So whether you're picking out your first policy or just looking for something that works better for you and your family, they make it easy to see your options. Visit Progressive.com. Find a rate that works for you with the Name Your Price tool. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
At DSW, we ask the important questions, like, what shoes are you going to wear? Whether you're prepping for wedding season, festival season, or just planning the ultimate vacay, the right shoes can make or break an RSVP. So own the moment. You've got big plans, and we've got just the shoes. At the perfect price, of course. Get ready to get ready with Designer Shoe Warehouse. Head to your DSW store or DSW.com today and let us surprise you.
What they did to your family, you're lucky to make it out alive.
Streaming on Peacock.
These men are going to come after me. Taking them out is my only chance.
Put a bullet in her head.
From the co-creator of Ozark.
Looks like a family was running drugs.
Execution-style killing, it's rare for the Keys. And it leads on who they might have been running for.
The cartel killed my family. I'm gonna kill them. All of them.
MIA. Streaming now. Only on Peacock.
My father began videotaping my mother and her family while they visited. He said he did this for the kids, so that we'd have tapes of our mother after she passed. They would sit for hours around the kitchen table talking about everything. So after sifting through multiple tapes of hours and hours of conversations about current events, the kids, and nothing of real significance, everyone is laughing and my father walks in and they go quiet. I can't make out everything they're saying, but you can hear my father joking about covering the red light on the camera with tape, and then he says he wants to do this because my mother keeps turning the camera off. And then my Aunt Lynette speaks up and says she turns it off because he was taping their conversations. And my mom laughs it off, saying that I enjoy seeing the tapes.
I gotta put some black tape over that.
If you got it.
I'm gonna go put some stuff in my hair. I'm gonna go get my glasses since I see my
I've always turned my camera off.
The reason why she does that is because she takes all this,
Well, everything over.
all of our conversations last night. Yeah, well, you know what? Though Sarah loves watching them.
I can't help but think that this is one more way for my father to control the situation. He states that he knows my mom is turning the camera off, and my Aunt Lynette is clearly not okay with it. But it seems that just like our father would eventually isolate Alyssa from her friends and family, he did the same thing to our mother. Like Linda mentioned earlier, after my mother was diagnosed with cancer, our father left some of my older brothers in Phoenix and moved the rest of the family to a very small town in California named Redding. I was always told that we moved so that my mother could be closer to a specialist. But what Lori remembers about this time and the move makes a lot more sense to me.
Even though she was going through a radiation and, all that, but, tried to make the best of it. And Mike was up in Redding, I think, working already. I don't know if he could get a job around there or what, but I don't know why he wanted to take her away. See, there's where the father thing comes in. It's like he wanted to take her away. Or maybe not her father. Maybe that's the wrong thing. He just wanted to be like her everything. Like she had to depend on him for everything. And so it took her away from all her friends down in Phoenix. And so that, that wasn't very, I don't know. I just wouldn't have done that right in the middle of her cancer and stuff. And then she only lived maybe, 6 months living in Redding, 8 months.
Yeah, I mean, I was always told that we moved to Redding to be closer to like a specialist or a doctor or something that my mom needed.
I think they have better doctors in Redding than they do in Phoenix. Phoenix. I mean, Phoenix is you go to Phoenix to get well. They have the best doctors in Phoenix. Redding is not the capital of it. I mean, no, there was no specialist up there.
Wow.
I think he just wanted to isolate her more from her family and her friends. But, we were closer, so we could travel there, a little bit more, but it was really hard to go and be around him,
In addition to being controlling and isolating her from the family, he started to belittle her and resent her. And it seemed like my mother really just wanted to be around her family.
When I was there at Thanksgiving, the year before she died, November of 92, she had called me up and she said, Sissy, I want us to have Thanksgiving. And I said, okay. And she said, I want a Thanksgiving like we had when we were kids. I said, okay. So I got on a plane, flew out to Sacramento.
But after a tiring shopping trip from the day before, my mother didn't have much of an appetite. So her, my Aunt Lori, and my Aunt Lynette went for a walk, and they smoked some pot in hopes of getting my mother hungry to eat some Thanksgiving dinner. And it worked. But when they got back to the house, my father was not pleased.
The only thing, when your mom wasn't eating at all. And so when I went up there, I smoke pot. I always have pot on me. And me and Lynette and your mom took a walk. And she smoked some pot and she came back and she was actually hungry. It was Thanksgiving. And she was actually hungry for food. And so she was eating. And your dad said something to the effect of, to the kids, I think it was, I can't remember exactly who it was. And he goes, this is exactly what a loser looks like. People that smoke pot are losers. And I was just like, oh, what the fuck? Really?
I actually found a clip from a home video from that Thanksgiving. My mom is at the kitchen counter, filling her plate with food with her sisters Lynette and Teresa. And Lori said my mother was barely eating. So you'd think even if my father was mad at them for smoking a little pot, he'd be happy that she was at least eating, right?
Mark, you could have stopped a minute. I got a picture of all three of you together, working out.
Aren't you crying? Did you hear? We're trying to eat.
I know you guys want to eat. That's all you think about is eating.
That's all we think about is eating?
Mm-hmm.
But like the beginning of so many strange stories within Alyssa's larger story, it gets more strange and so much worse. Like I mentioned, my father was getting resentful as she was getting more and more ill, and he made comments about not being able to sleep with her, having to take care of her, and how upset he was that she was leaving him with all these kids.
Well, there was a point that he said to my mom, he said, he said, does she even know what she's doing? And my mom looked at him and she said, what? She said, she's leaving me here with these kids and everything to take care of myself by myself.
And it looks like, just as he had done in the past, he was already thinking about getting another woman in the house to take care of the kids. But of course, Michael Turney wouldn't just pick any new wife.
And then he told Kevin that same time that he was looking for another wife. He wasn't going to raise kids alone, and he was looking for another wife. And that, I think, was when he started really thinking about Lynette to replace Barbara.
Wow.
Yeah. Mike's telling his brother-in-law that he's already looking for another wife, and his wife's laying in there dying. Give me a break. Kevin, he said if I didn't lose respect for him before, I lost complete respect for him right then. He goes, I knew Barbara was in, he goes, I kind of always knew Barbara was in trouble with him, but, wow. That was a biggie to Kevin, because a normal person wouldn't do that.
And it was at this time, while his 34-year-old wife, the full-time mother to his 6 children, who was dying of cancer, that he allegedly committed another act of sexual assault on another sister-in-law. The third sister-in-law, if you're keeping count. Here's Lori again, describing the call she got from Lynette about the incident.
I need to tell you something. This is going to make me cry.
It's okay. Take your time. And I'm okay. Like, you can tell me anything, and I'll. It's better that I know than I don't know.
I don't know if you know this, because I can only tell you now because Lynette's not here. So she never wanted to be questioned. Your dad raped her. She called me the night it happened. She didn't tell me what happened. All I remember is her calling me and telling me that she was scared. I mean, she was crying for Barbara. Barbara wasn't there. Barbara had went to visit grandparents in Michigan.
Oh.
She took a flight there, and Lynette stayed there to take care of you kids. And that's when it happened. She feels, and her mom thought the same thing, was that he drugged her drink, because she only had 2 mixed drinks. Lynette could hold her liquor.
Oh, yeah.
And she
yeah.
had 2 mixed drinks. She said she staggered down the hall, and the next thing she knew, he was on top of her, and he was kind of like suffocating her. But he was raping her. She was crying so hard, it was hard to understand. And I just kept telling her to just breathe, just try to breathe and talk to me, just breathe and talk to me, tell me what's going on, And she actually couldn't say the words, but I kind of had a feeling of what was going on, but your dad's a scary person to even confront with anything.
Even this early in the story, we can see that my father is developing a pattern. He assaulted a third sister-in-law who was already married. Like Donna, Jamie, and his first wife's 2 sisters, he was pursuing women he absolutely should not, for a variety of reasons. But Lynette didn't tell my mother. She was afraid of my father, and afraid of being cut off from the family if she spoke up. I don't know if my mother ever found out, and I kind of hope she didn't. But like so many things in this story, I never knew the details of my mother's death. I never asked. And if I'm being honest, I didn't want to know. It seemed so clear-cut. It was cancer. End of story. But as I began asking more questions, my father's stories started to fall apart, as they tend to do. Growing up, one thing I always knew was that 3 weeks before my mother died, my father was fired from his job. He said there was no good reason, that it was just the union harassing him again, and this tormented my father for decades. It was the cornerstone of his sob story. Look at this poor guy. He gets fired by a corrupt union just 3 weeks before his wife dies of cancer? What terrible luck. But none of it was true. My Aunt Teresa sent me a document. My father was never fired from his job 3 weeks before his wife died. He quit. And it clearly states that he will lose all health and life insurance benefits by the end of the month. So at this point, if my mother didn't die by the end of the day on February 28th, 1993, my father would be left with no health insurance, with 6 children and a wife currently in the end stages of cancer, requiring numerous expensive medications. He would be left with no income and no life insurance money. But that didn't seem to concern him much at all. In fact, he was spending more money than ever, and he would even justify the spending, stating that the life insurance policy would cover it, knowing that my mother would have to die in just a few weeks in order for him to collect the money.
Stuff. You know, it's like, oh, why are you spending all this money? Barbara's got cancer. And, oh, well, we're going to get a big settlement out of her life insurance policy. And it's like, oh, my. I asked Kevin, I said, do you think there's any way he could have given her cancer? You know, I mean, is there an injection you can give somebody that gives them cancer? Because I swear if that man could do that, he would. He seemed like he was money hungry.
This is not the part where I tell you that I think my father injected my mother with something that gave her cancer. But it is the part where I tell you that I think he had a plan to ensure that my mother died before this 3-week deadline was up. Time was ticking, and people were watching. My mother's sister Lynette and her mother Linda came to care for her in those last few weeks. And what they reported back to Teresa is extremely suspicious, to say the least.
Mike called me and said, if your mom and Lynette are going to come here to take care of Barbara, then they need to get here because we're at the end. I remember Mom telling me when they first got there was that Mike had sat down with them and he told them, okay, this is how it's going to go. And he had this schedule, I guess, I don't know, it was on the refrigerator or what, but he had this schedule of what medications she got, when she got them, and how much. And so he went over this schedule with them, with the medication, and of course, Barb was at that point pretty sick, and again, all the changes. So it was emotional for my mom and Lynette.
Sure.
And so that's when he offered them. I said, well, I've got these little happy pills, and so this is going to be hard. So if you need this medication, I've got it, and here it is for you. And he handed the bottle to my mom, and my mom handed it back, and she said, yeah, I don't do that stuff. And so she wasn't going to take it. Lynette said no. Mom said, I'm here to take care of my daughter. That's all I'm here to do. And so that was the first thing. Then when he was going over this schedule is when he told them this. He said, here's how much of the pain medication she gets. She was on liquid morphine. And
through like an IV drip, or
no, it was like a dropper, or I don't know if they put it in a like a dropper and put it in her mouth, or they used a spoon, but it was, she took it orally. And he said towards the end, what's going to have to happen here is that it's going to get so bad that we're going to have to increase the dose. And he said, what eventually is going to happen is we have to increase the dose enough that she will be in a morphine coma. That's what he told my mom.
Huh.
And so after this conversation, Mom and Lynette were outside on the porch, and she looked at Lynette and she said, so do you understand what he's telling us? He's telling us he wants us to overdose her. And She said, unless I have a doctor telling me that I need to increase her dosage, that it's going to go the way it says on the prescription. So at that point, Mom started being more diligent and paying more attention to when Mike was giving her the medication, because they were going to all take shifts or take turns or whatever.
Yeah.
And she was in the hospital bed in the living room at that point, and there was a recliner in there, so Mom slept in that recliner. So if Barbara woke up and needed anything, she was right there. She recalled one night that she had given her whatever Mike had, I guess it was the first time she gave it to her in the dropper, that Mike had told her to give this much, so she did. And Barbara looked at her and she said, "Is that all?" I mean, here's the one thing about your mom. She never became incoherent. She knew everything that was going on. She knew everything she was supposed to have, when she was supposed to have it, how she could have it, whatever. She knew.
So you're saying she was surprised that it was a smaller dose instead of like the normal larger dose my dad was giving her?
Exactly.
Wow.
So it was not enough. So what my mom kind of deduced at this point was that Mike, first of all, was underdosing her so that it would appear that her pain was increasing, so that they could up the dose.
Right, because who cares about her actually being in pain when you can just manipulate the entire situation?
Exactly. So then at that point is when he said, "Well, I guess we're going to have to up the dose." Well, Barbara knew what she got that night was not the amount she normally got. The amount she normally got would have been sufficient.
Well, yeah, I'm sure you can like feel the difference in your mouth. Like if you take a shot, you
exactly.
Yeah.
So Mom went to the bottle and got the little bottle with the dropper in it, and she just, she said, "Okay, this is what it says on the bottle. This is how much I'm giving her. I don't care what his schedule says. This is what the doctor has prescribed."
Right.
So she went back to doing the regular dose. Well, then I guess Mike tried to flip that around a little bit and still maintain that he was going to up her dose. And Mom had given her medication. It was her shift. And she had given her medication. Barbara was happy with that, happy with what she had received. And about an hour later, Mom was in the recliner, and my mother was always a very light sleeper. She heard everything. And so she was in the recliner, had her eyes closed. I think the dad just assumed she was asleep. So Mike came up to the bed to give Barbara another dose of medication. And Mom woke up or opened her eyes and looked at him and she said, "I've already given her her meds." And it kind of took your dad by surprise at that point. And so he stopped. He said, "Oh, I guess I wasn't aware." So he was trying to give her a second dose.
I mean, was there like a chart or anything where you guys tracked it that he would have been able to...
Originally, yes, there was.
Okay.
Originally, there was. And that's, again, when my mom caught him that night is when the chart went to hell. Yeah, I'm going to give it to her according to the bottle. Barbara knows when she needs it or when she gets it. This is how we're going to do this, whether his chart fits that or not is not. But it's no longer important to her.
I guess what I'm asking is, like, when you guys gave her the dose or when they gave her the doses, did you guys write it down? Like, at 6:15 I gave this many milligrams or whatever. Was that tracked at all?
I think it was just like a little, because I think what he did, he was pretty, it was like the schedule of hours that went down one side, and then there was the days of the week at the top. So you just checkboxed it when you gave her the medication.
Sure. So there was a way to check if somebody had already given her a dose. Okay.
Right. And so, and Mom had done his little chart for him that night. Apparently he didn't care. So he was fully intended. He was doing what he intended to do. It wasn't that he was not aware. And so that was when my mom said, okay, enough. And so what she did is she went and got some blankets, and she made a pallet on the floor right next to Barbara's bed on the side that Mike would have to come to give her medication or do whatever. And Mom slept on the floor next to her bed.
Wow.
So that Mike would have to wake her in order to get to Barbara.
So she knew. I mean, she knew.
Yeah.
Was there
She
any...
knew exactly what was going on. And that was when she heard the conversation with his, that he had with his mom. He had no idea that Mom was in the house when he was on the phone that night.
What are you talking about? What did he say on the phone?
He was talking to his mother, and that's when he told, my mom overheard him telling his mother that if she doesn't die before February 1st, then the life insurance policy is no good. So that's when Mom started putting all these things together about how much morphine she gets and how we're going to have to overdose her and so on and so on.
Yeah.
And so that's when she put it all together, and she told Lynette, she said, now we have to pay real close attention to everything.
Was there any confrontation that ever happened between them?
You know what? There was not. Well,
which I get. I mean, she's dying. It's her last days. There's a ton of kids in the house.
There was one point where, again, Mike started to feel like with my mom there, he was losing that control. He also knew that he was on a timeline.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what the whole conversation was. I do know that my mother, I know what it was. He said something about the house not getting clean. He wasn't working. And the house wasn't getting clean, and the other kids are not being taken care of, and blah, blah, blah. And my mom looked at him, and she said, and I'm not here to be your maid. The house is yours. And nothing else to do in the day. I'm here to take care of Barbara. That's it.
Right.
I'm not here to take care of your house. Well, she got angry, and she went outside from the patio doors in the back, and he had a punching bag that was hanging there, or one of those long punching bags. And my mom said he went out there, and she said he hit that thing so hard that it pulled the screw out of and it dropped on the ground. So he was that angry, and he was that intent on letting her know what I'm capable of. And she was afraid at that point. And so, not that she was afraid enough to keep moving his direction or change to his direction, but she made sure, and she, like I said, she told Lynette, we just have to be very careful and diligent at this point. Yeah. I don't know what he's going to do if she was capable of at that point, other than you can hit a back hard enough to knock it out of this point. So that was the only, I guess, confrontation that they had, although there was one day Barbara so badly wanted to go to the lake. I don't know where the lake is, or there's a little park, or a little lake somewhere. And she wanted to go to the lake. And she was intent on it. So Mom and Lynette, your dad and Mom had a van at that time. So what they did is they took the recliner that sat in the living room and they put it in the van. And then they set her in the recliner in the van and took her to the lake.
That's amazing.
And your dad was just livid. He was livid that they took her out.
I mean, was she not supposed to be outside, or what?
There was no reason for her not to go. I mean, we're at this point now where you're at the end of your days. If you want something, do it. Was it going to make her cancer worse?
Yeah.
Was it going to make her die sooner? So they did. They took her out to the lake and they sat out there, and she absolutely loved it. So that was pretty much what I remember those days. Like I said, the phone call was what made, and the fact that he was trying to give her the medication extra was what alerted my mom to it. Now, the day that she passed, and my mom and I talked about this, because most people, when they are at that point, there's a certain peace that comes. There's a certain calm that comes. And I've worked with geriatric patients, I've worked with the elderly, I've worked with the dying, and this happens. There's just a peace that comes over them because somehow inherently or innately we know, and you just let go.
Yeah.
So the day that she passed, Mom said that I think Lynette gave her medication that morning, and she was sleeping pretty comfortably. She woke up, and Mom was outside when she woke up. And so I guess your dad gave her the last dose of medication. Keep in mind, this is the 28th of February.
Yeah. And the insurance policy lapsed that next month in March.
You got till midnight.
Right.
You got till midnight. And so Mom went back in the house. Barbara looked at Mom, and she said the look was a little bit strange, but she thought, well, and she asked her, she said, "Are you in pain?" And Barbara shook her head no. She didn't speak, she just shook her head no. And Mom said that and of course, we grew up in my mom's era, and a lot of people, nobody died in the hospital in my mom's era. Everybody died at home. So it was something that she recognized, and she said what she thought she was hearing was what they termed in those days as the death rattle. There's a certain way people breathe at the end. It's usually the last few minutes. And she said what she thought she was hearing was a death rattle. Barbara never got that call. Barbara never got that peace. She kept begging Mom to call 911, to call for an ambulance within moments. And again, Mom not knowing, and there's no evidence or proof of otherwise, only our suspicion was that he gave her too much.
Yeah, because it wasn't like a peaceful lull. It was like, right. Oh my gosh, I got too much medication, call 911, yeah. Like it can be helped.
Yeah.
Oh.
And so, again, Mom not knowing, she sat with her, she kept telling her, it's okay, baby, you can let go, whatever. And Barbara kept shaking her head, and she said she wanted her to call 911. And Mom said, she looked at Barbara and a tear rolled down her cheek. And she called Mike, Mom did, and she said, if you want to be here for her last moments, you need to be here now. So he came in the room, he sat on the edge of the bed, and she took her last breath.
Wow.
He never talked to her, he never spoke to her. Mom and Lynette were both there, letting her know that she was loved, that she would be missed. Her dad never said anything.
Barbara Lee Turney was pronounced dead at 5 a.m. on February 28, 1993, less than 24 hours shy of the expiration date of her life insurance policy. My father requested that no autopsy be performed. The official cause listed on her death certificate is respiratory failure due to large cell carcinoma of the lung. Next time on Voices for Justice.
Well, there was a lot of hints that were coming when I came to stay with you guys. When you tell them You know, he told me what he had to do with Alyssa, you know, about tying her up one time. And he just came out of the blue, just telling me, you know, like, why would you tell me that? You know, I mean, and I think he was doing that just in case Alyssa was going to put it out to me.
Yeah, but he's the master manipulator. You know what I mean? And he manipulated you. He manipulated everybody around him. I think everybody feared him. Nobody wanted anything to do with him.
There's not a reason in the world that I could think of anybody wanting to hate Alyssa besides your dad.
I just remember, I recall, you know, like I said, your dad has so many medications. I mean, I remember one time I just ordered, had 30 of them on his, he had this table or little night table, whatever you want to call it, or chest. I don't remember if it was by his bed. Man, there was like 30 bottles right there or something like that. It was just insane, the amount of pill bottles. You know?
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh my God.
Well, and if he was giving these to me and I was taking them willingly, like, who's to say that these weren't being, like, crushed up and put in our food or something?
And I found out yesterday that Alyssa knew about the camera in the vent, too. So
Alyssa knew about all the cameras.
Were there more?
Voices for Justice is hosted, produced, and edited by me, Sarah Turney. If you want to learn more about Alyssa's story and how you can help with the case, visit justicefораlyssa.com. And if you love the show, it would really help if you gave me a rating and review in your podcast player. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you next time.
Close your eyes. Listen to Monday.com. Feel the sensation of an AI work platform. So flexible and intuitive, it feels like it was built just for you. Now open your eyes, go to Monday.com, start for free, and finally breathe.